Greetings everyone, NoZoupForYou here, and we are looking at a preview of the Key, a Tier 8 IJN Battleship that will be making its way to the game very soon. As with all previews of unreleased ships, this ship is subject to change. The stats, they might not be the same by the time the ship rolls around, so let's delve into this new battleship that has torpedoes. Yeah, that's right, the Key has torpedoes. First, a little bit of the history. If you're looking for some information about the Key or some photos or anything else, you might be a little hard-pressed to find any. This is very much a paper battleship. While there were 4 of the Key-class battleship planned, plans to complete and finish those were scrapped in the 1920s after the Washington Naval Treaty was signed. The ship was preceded by the Tosa class and was supposed to be succeeded by the number 13 class. Tosa was somewhat similar to the Nagato. The Key class itself is somewhat reminiscent of the Amagi. It's almost like a cross between the Amagi and the Fuso, so very similar to both ships. And plus again, you've got those torpedoes that I keep mentioning. Very cool, right? Let's talk about the ship itself and some of the attributes that it has. You're looking at a firing range of 18.7 kilometers. Now I'm going to be comparing these to the Amagi because both ships are Tier 8. The Amagi has a firing range of 19.9 kilometers. So right off the bat, you can see that the Key loses a little bit of its range, and that hurts it just a little bit. Both share 410mm shells. That's very nice. Both also have max shell damage of 12,600 on their AP Alpha Strike. HE shells are exactly the same as well, which one would expect the Tier 8 battleship with 410mm shells. Now here's where things change up a little bit more. Concealment for the Key is 17%, whereas the concealment rating for the Amagi is 20%. So that gives a surface detectability range of 17.8 for the Key and 17.3 for the Amagi. So difference right there, your detectability is not as good. Moving on to maneuverability. Got a max speed of 29.5 knots for the Key. Top speed for the Amagi is 30 knots, so not a huge difference right there. You're only missing out on 0.5 knots. Now here's a big difference right here. Rudder shift time for the Key is 15.9 seconds, whereas rudder shift time for the Amagi's 20.8. So that's pretty good right there, and that's nice. That helps you in many ways, especially when you're firing torpedoes close range. And I'll get to the torpedoes here in a little bit because they're kind of cool in some ways, and in some ways they're kind of lacking. But let's talk about what I think about the Key in general, now that you know how it differs from the Amagi. First and foremost, the Key is interesting, and you might see by the title of this video that the Key is very average. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with an average premium battleship being added into the game. It's kind of refreshing, actually. You have a battleship that has some serious pros and some serious cons. I think right now there are too many ships in the premium range that excel over their in-tier counterparts. That is not the case with the Key. In fact, I would say that the Key is almost outclassed by the Amagi in many ways. For instance, one thing that really hurts the Key, one gigantic con that everyone seems to be complaining about right now, is the reload time. 35 seconds, as opposed to the Amagi that has a 30-second reload time. That really affects your damage per minute, and this is probably the biggest detractor of the Key right now. I find myself not putting up the damage numbers that I feel like I should be in a battleship, and part of it's on account of that slow reload time. You're missing out on being able to put lead down range. A lot of people have said maybe drop it to 30 seconds or 32, but I don't necessarily agree with that. And the reason is, if you drop the reload time of this battleship down to 30 seconds, you've basically got an Amagi with a little less range. So then what's the point of playing the Amagi? Exactly. Where is the trade-off in the Key? What makes you want to play it instead of the Amagi? Well, that's the torpedo factor. You've got 2 launchers, one on each side, obviously, and they spit out 3 torpedoes per side. So not that bad. Now, here's a couple of the things. The torpedoes have pros and cons themselves. The biggest pro about these torpedoes are that you have excellent arc for a battleship. you have very good arc. You can spit off torpedoes on one side, then use your fast rudder shift to switch it up and fire to the other side if you're engaging a battleship at very close range, like I did with this Yamato. Now here's the cons about the torpedoes. Only 6-kilometer range, and for me, I feel that's very short. I know the Tirpitz has 6-kilometer range as well, but I'm going to tell you right now, if it's between the Key and the Tirpitz in a very close quarter battle, I think the Tirpitz is going to win out usually. And overall, I think the Tirpitz is really a better battleship, a premium battleship at Tier 8. The Key, while it's not bad, like I said, it's just average. Nothing wrong with that. But it's just a very squishy battleship. It can get citadeled fairly easy. It's very much like your mid to high tier IJN battleships aside from the Yamato. You take damage very easily. Actually, this ship really reminds me a lot of the Mutsu. If you like the Mutsu, you will probably like the Key a lot. Well, I take that back. They're very different battleships in many ways. I think the Mutsu might have an edge over the Key. The problem with the Key is you're going to be facing a lot of Tier 9s and a lot of Tier 10s. And that really doesn't bode well for the armor scheme on the Key. Anyone who's played the Amagi knows that you've got some seriously devastating firepower, but you also really can't take hits the way you can in other counterpart battleships, especially German battleships. So you're at a little bit of a disadvantage in the Key. While you do have 3 torpedoes as opposed to just 1 that the Mutsu has, still, you're risking an awful lot getting in range to use those. However, don't discredit this battleship as a brawler. As you saw in my little melee against that Yamato and the 5 other ships that were around me, I held my own. It's almost like with the Key, the closer you are to danger, the further away you are from harm. You get citadeled left and right from medium range, but once you get up close, you seem to do a little better for some reason, and your survivability notches up just a bit. Still, I don't want to put myself in that position very often. Overall, what are my thoughts on the Key? Well, I think it's plainly obvious right now in this preview that I think she's perfectly average. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. She can be a very enjoyable battleship. I think a lot of players are going to enjoy her, and some people might decide to pass on her, which is perfectly fine. Because of that, just somewhat plain Jane vanilla averageness on this battleship. I think the biggest detractors for this, obviously, are the reload time at 35 seconds. How would I solve this and give it a little more damage per second? Personally, I think the torpedoes should be 8 kilometers. Maybe even bump them up to 10 kilometers. Somewhere in that range. Give them a slight torpedo boost to give yourself a little more offensive capability from a little further out to make up for the shortcomings in your rate of fire. Note, just prior to the release of this video, I received word that the Key will be receiving some changes. It's having 700 meters added to its firing range. It's got a 4-second decrease of fire. That'll be 31 seconds as opposed to 35, but the speed of its train rate will increase by 0.7 degrees per second. These changes, in my opinion, will significantly affect the ship, but again, decreasing the firing time from 35 seconds to 31 seconds is huge. That's going to make a huge difference in the damage per minute. That's going to bring it in line with the Amagi, and with the added torps, the added range of its guns, it makes it a contender to the Amagi at this point. So time will tell, but really this is shaping up to be better than average. If you like the Mutsu, you'll probably like this ship. If you like the Amagi, you'll probably like this ship. This ship is very much a cross between the Mutsu, the Fuso, and the Amagi. You've got torpedoes like the Mutsu. Your Sigma is not quite as good as the Amagi, if I recall. I think it's a lot closer to the Fuso. So your gun handling is more like the Fuso with Amagi caliber weapons. So there you have it. This is the preview of the Key. New Tier 8 premium battleship coming out at some point in the future. Again, everything is subject to change. What you're seeing here is not necessarily what you're going to see at the ship's release. Anyhow, guys, thanks for watching this preview. I wish you good fortune and all the wars to come. I am out.